these federal judges kind of going rogue. And kind of you sent this to me, Hannah Claire, so I'm going to let you take the lead on the story. But it's not just the trans military ban. It's, trying to stop them from deporting people, trying to reinstate USAID. What I'm going to let you take this story and give people the heads up. And my question is, at what point is Trump just going to say, you know what, I don't care? What's a famous Andrew? Did Andrew Jackson say that? The Supreme Court has had their ruling. Now let's see them enforce it. Something like that. Like, at what point is Trump just going to be like, I don't care anymore? People hear federal judge and they think, oh, that must be like power over Trump. That's not how it works. You're just some federal level judge in some random state. You don't have any power over Trump. These people are just doing it for the headlines.
In this case, it's a district judge in DC. They're not even in a real state.
Get wrecked.
Well, I'm not kidding, but that is true.
Yeah.
So a lot of people remember that one of Trump's various executive orders was banning, there are only, he said there are only 2 genders in the U.S. That's the only thing we recognize. And therefore, you can't be transgender and be accommodated in the military. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, has been very proactive on this. The secretary or the director of the VA has come out announcing like various policies that were in place to basically give medical treatments to people who identify as transgender are going away. And of course, as this has been an incremental creep in the military, this has also gone away pretty quickly. So there are tons of people who are sort of appalled by it. There's a whole other conversation about like, should people who think they're in the wrong body be allowed to serve when we don't let people who have to take SSRIs qualify for the military?
No, the answer is no. We don't even let people who have diabetes serve in active duty, I don't think.
Right. But also when you get in and you decide to transition, then we pay for it. Like I think it's bananas. But I want to, I know there's a debate over it. I always thought a legal challenge was coming. So this was challenged by transgender service members. It was brought before the court, and Anna Reyes out of DC, she's a district judge, ruled that Trump can't do this. And the administration does have a couple days to appeal. And this again is sort of an ongoing, Trump sets the bar really high on an issue, and then it's going to get battled out, and we'll see where it ends up. I think in some ways people are becoming frustrated. I mean, some of the Supreme Court justices expressed frustration when when a state judge said that Trump can't ban probation or fire probationary employees, and they all have to go back on unpaid leave. That was earlier this week. So you're seeing this sort of judicial ping pong, but also at the extent or at the cost of the taxpayers.
What do you make of it, Styx?
Well, my thought is that Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief of the United States military forces.
I see where this is going.
I was unaware of the fact that a random judge, and not even in an actual state, was able to block him from implementing military policy. Seems very strange to me. I have no problem with transgendered people, but I was thinking of it earlier. I made a video this morning. There are 2 kinds because there are 2 genders, female to male and male to female. Okay. Let's say that you're male to female. You're going to have to dilate. Is this doable when you're in a foxhole? Probably not. You're asking for, it's basically like, hey, the soldier is heavily diabetic and has to shoot insulin all the time.
Right.
But they're perfectly equipped for combat. Everything's fine. What if you're female to male? Now, this might be overly chivalrous, but I don't believe that women should serve in combat roles. If you want to be like a nurse or in communications or something like that, that's a totally different story, but we shouldn't be putting females in harm's way. They're still female. The transgender thing is, I think, beginning to rankle the population. I think people are getting a little bit tired of it, honestly. Yeah. And it's dragging it, not just for people that are like far right or anything like that. Like, I'm not far right at all, but I'm rolling my eyes and thinking to myself, why is this the hill to die on? And how the hell, again, does the judiciary have any capability to stop the literal commander of the entire military from implementing military policy? It doesn't make any sense. It'll have to be battled out in court, and I think that Trump in the end will win. but it's nonsensical. It's completely moronic.
They also introduced, sorry, I was going to say, it also introduces this exposure to kind of the hypocrisy. I know people have talked about this in terms of like hysterectomies. Like if you identify as transgender, they'll give you a hysterectomy. But if you're just like a woman who doesn't want to have children, you actually have to wait. It actually becomes pretty difficult to get sterilized. And so it's sort of like the same treatment being supplied differently. I did this interview. So a couple of years ago, or probably like 18 months ago at this point, the Navy introduced even higher and more stringent protocols to prevent the use of steroids in the military. And it often happens with like Navy SEAL training that people who really want to be a Navy SEAL, and it's very difficult to become a Navy SEAL, turn to steroids to push their bodies to the limits to achieve that. And at the time I had done an interview with someone who had been through Navy SEAL training and had been like, don't you want the person who's willing to do anything to be the highest level combat readiness to be there? But they're not allowed to take it, whether they should or not. That's a whole different story. But if you want hormones to alter your gender, to alter your physical appearance, right now, the military will accommodate you. That seems bizarre to me. That one use case is to be the ultimate soldier and one is to serve the self. Like, isn't that the opposite of why people are supposed to go into the military?
Yeah, well, you're allowed to shoot testosterone and stuff like that, but only under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
It's completely perverse.
You can roid only if you're a woman. I think that we've talked about this with Trump's executive order flurry that he laid out there. We knew that 2/3 of them would be challenged in court. And that's exactly why one of the executive orders he put out was that you had to, if you challenged one of his policies, essentially, or one of his EOs and lost, you had to pay the legal bills. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know if that's going to hold up in court or not, but he knew all this stuff was going to get challenged. I think the point is you're going to have 200,000, EOs or whatever, 5,000 executive orders in the first 3 months. They're going to have to pick and choose their battles, and some of them are just going to pass. Mm-hmm. And these kind of activist judges, I'm actually unfamiliar. I don't know if either of you know the actual answer. I hope that one of you does, or maybe chat can bail us out. How do you get rid of some of these activist judges who don't really seem like they're acting like judges? They seem like they're doing these things to get, political clout and, political points with their local constituents.
Well, they're also being fielded in part as a political weapon by Democratic members of Congress and Democratic governors. You've got to keep that in mind, too. I don't know exactly how you combat them, though, because impeaching them, removing them from their position is going to be a little bit difficult, especially since John Roberts fired a shot across the bow, actually, just yesterday, saying, well, 200 years of legal precedent doesn't generally allow for the impeachment of justices. Well, that shows where he's going to vote. So that makes 4 liberals on the court. And we can't necessarily rely on Amy Coney Barrett now, can we?
No, we cannot.
So
she's proved that.
It's not of necessity that they actually rule in favor of the Trump administration.
I think there are certain levels of judges, like federal versus district versus state. I'm not totally clear on the nuance, but there are ways to impeach judges, I think, through the House of Representatives. I just feel like there's a sort of status quo where it's like, you're not allowed to do that because it's not very nice, or it has to be really extreme circumstances. Like there is this weird formality in party politics that exists even in judicial appointments. But I think the part of it is proving judges acting out of activism is something that we just don't do right now. And this is true of attorney generals, but at least attorney generals theoretically come up for re-election. It's like we are pretending. I mean, you could talk about this in context of the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, right? That's technically it's technically a nonpartisan race, but one candidate has the backing of the Republicans and one candidate has the backing of Democrats. Like we know that just because someone is a judge doesn't mean they necessarily divorce themselves from partisan politics.
Yeah.
That's the worst misconception that the public has, that judges don't have some sort of political or socio-political leanings. They think, oh, well, these are astute wig wearers that just go by the law. They are totally above board. They are above politics. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I think in other times in American culture, when we had things outside of politics to create identity, that was more true. Not entirely true. Everyone has a political bent in some respect. But I think there were times when, just like journalists, judges were more careful to try and be open-minded or be balanced. But as we now, worship at the altar of politics all the time, judges are not immune from it. I mean, that's why so often, I think Laura Loomer had a post about this with one of the judges that's currently holding up some Trump administration stuff. She pointed out that the daughter works for a pro-immigrant group that gives legal advice to people who are in the country illegally. And then that girl scrubbed her Facebook or her LinkedIn and Instagram. Like people know
that's the actions of an innocent person.
Right. I mean, it's the daughter, and theoretically, like, children aren't beholden to their parents' political view. On the other hand, it makes sense that, like, this is probably a conversation that's had around the dinner table, and an ideology is born from it.